Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host, Bill DeFilippo, joined today by my co-host, Matt Filipovitz. Matt, what's going on?
Bill, it's been a minute since we recorded. And as you may know, Bill, I have gone cold turkey on most social media. I'm off Twitter, I'm off Blue Sky. So I haven't had an outlet for takes in quite a long time. So I'm going to start this two takes that I have. Right off the bat, there was an interview with Matt Campbell a couple of days ago with Andy and Ari from On3. Not to start our own podcast by plugging a different podcast, but whatever, it is what it is. They asked Matt Campbell about different food options in State College. And Matt Campbell seemed very happy with his food options in State College as compared to Ames, Iowa. And I was talking to some buddies. Bill, none of my friends apparently ever went to Plaza Mexican in State College. And that I think is top tier in terms of State College food. One of my favorites.
Was that the Mexican place that was like out by the mall, or was that the
Correct.
one that was?
Well, not
okay.
the one by the Navy
yeah.
Mall. You're thinking of I think that's Plaza Azteca. This is the one by where an Ollie's got put in right around my junior year. So let's say 2017, 2018. Near the
like the IHOP.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember that place from when I lived in State College because they had like it was like a pineapple fried rice that they served in half a pineapple.
Yes.
And
yes.
I was just I was blown away by the novelty of that as a person whose last name ends in a vowel.
My girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, she ordered that the first time we went. She's like, "This is the fanciest place we could ever imagine going." Yes, hell yeah. Also, I saw Penn State DB at the time, Trent Gordon there. So shout out to Trent Gordon. Bill, my other take is Taylor Mauser went on another podcast who's done by Dan Casey, who runs a great newsletter, by the way, Play a Day newsletter. I'll plug that. And he was asked what band or musical artist he would compare his offense to, and he said Steely Dan. I love Steely Dan, maybe more than I love anything on earth. So I am now all in on this coaching staff. They could get shut out the first 3 weeks of the year, and I will give them grace because of the Steely Dan comparison. And those are my two biggest thoughts I've had in the last 3 or 4 months, however long it's been since we last recorded.
Can I challenge you on one thing you just said?
Yeah, sure.
There is zero chance you would give them any grace if they got shut out by Marshall, Temple, and Buffalo.
Well, the Temple thing maybe, because that would be funny full circle.
There is zero chance you would offer them an ounce of grace if that. Nobody would, to be clear. Like Campbell would probably like. I don't know if Campbell would make it to the end of the season if they put up 0 points against Marshall, Temple, and Buffalo. But
well, Bill, it's a change of the guard. That's a Steely Dan song.
Well, I don't know how many people would peg you as a Steely Dan fan, but
nice.
There you go. I'm not super into Steely Dan, but I know enough, mostly from seeing Oh Hello a couple of times. Neither here nor there. Like Matt mentioned, it's been a minute since the last time we recorded our podcast. We haven't done this since the end of January. It took a little bit of time. I think everybody knows this by now. None of us are actually in State College. It's very hard for us to give too terribly much insight into kind of this first wave of the Matt Campbell era of Penn State because we just haven't really been around it. But we are now getting to the point where spring ball is now over. We've gotten a sense of what Matt Campbell wants his Penn State program to look like. So here's what we're going to do. Today is just a general, we're getting some of the rust off podcast. We're talking about the offseason, what has us most excited at this point, most concerned at this point, other various things that we'll talk about.
We're going to try to upload this to YouTube. We're going to knock that rust off too.
We finally have the alignment that we've so desperately craved for years with uploading to YouTube. Obviously, it's a thing that we've wanted forever. It's all of it. It's YouTube, it's Instagram, it's X, formerly Twitter. And when you have that alignment, it's Quibi. And when you have that alignment from the very top down, you can reach levels that you have never reached as a podcast or as a college football program that is betting on Pat Kraft to give you money. So we're going to be doing a lot of stuff like that. We're starting next week. We are going to be getting into season preview stuff. We are going to be going like we did last year with position previews, which is going to be a fun experiment for everyone because I don't know if you've noticed, like half of Penn State's team is brand new. So it's a really good opportunity for us to learn along with all of you as we go through the long and interminable offseason. We have it all mapped out straight through August 31st, which is when the Marshall preview is going to happen. So we will get to all of that farther down the road. But Matt, we are now about 5 months into the Matt Campbell era. Penn State's had a full spring ball to start to install Matt Campbell's vision of Penn State football on the field, off the field, whatever. And I think it would be really good to just do kind of like a 10,000 foot view of things. So
Mhm.
I have it on the little rundown is so the offseason, eh?
Yeah,
So the
it's
offseason, eh?
Yeah, it's been an interesting one to say the least. I mean, obviously there was the excitement of all the players that Penn State was able to retain, like some truly massive names from not only the 2025 season but also 2024 season, and like Anthony Donko, Tony Rojas, Max Granville. Like there are some pretty big names here who opted to stick around. And then obviously the influx of talent, both from Iowa State as well as really watching how Matt Campbell operated in terms of finding diamonds in the rough, going out there and finding a guy like Brock Riker from Texas State, a guy who I'm sure Matt Campbell had his eye on from a while back. Watching the Iowa State receivers room, which made its hay finding 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" guys at JUCOs who were not that highly recruited and bringing them in. And Penn State did that, and a guy like Keith Jones Jr. from Grambling State, who I know missed spring ball. But to watch how Matt Campbell built a roster from marrying in the parts from the Penn State roster he candidly couldn't land at Iowa State, bringing in, I think, the best parts of Iowa State, and then doing the Matt Campbell coaching staff thing of filling in the gaps with diamonds in the rough was really interesting to watch. Obviously there was coaching turnover, not only from, guys who came in with Campbell originally in that first round, but losing Noah Pauley, halfway through inner workouts to the Green Bay Packers wide receivers job. So overall, Billy, I mean, it's an incredibly unique offseason, and I'm really glad we're taking this, 3 months at a 3 month series of podcasts here for us to go position by position because we have a lot of catching up to do ourselves. Like, we've been doing this podcast, Bill, for like 10 years at this point, give or take. Like, it's been a long time coming. And every year I feel like we have a really good grasp on the roster fairly quickly. But even though these guys the roster has been set for about 5 months now with no spring portal anymore, it's still going to take some time to learn what this team is going to be. But I'll tell you what, I think Matt Campbell has imported enough pieces for this to be a competitive roster right off the rip.
The whole offseason has been completely fascinating because it is, for the most part, just like taking two football teams and mushing them together. Like everyone is going, I think a lot of people are going to make the comparisons to the first year of Kurt Cignetti at Indiana, where Cignetti went in, took a bunch of JMU players with him, and was able to kind of raise the floor at IU. And I disagree with that a bit because this has been just like such a gigantic undertaking in terms of bringing a million guys from Iowa State, keeping however many guys they ended up keeping from Penn State, filling in a couple of gaps with like, I have a depth chart pulled up here: Oklahoma State, UCLA, Colorado, Utah, like all over the place, just looking for areas where they can add bodies and add guys they think they can compete at the Big Ten. And then on top of that, you look through the list of like the core guys who were impacted by injury during the offseason. To an extent, Rocco Becht, Alex Mansky, Keith Jones Jr., Ben Brahmer, Andrew Rapplier. Like there have just been so many, and that's just the offensive side of the ball. There are so many guys that we expect are going to have really important roles on the team that them not being able to participate, like I want to start now that I've already started by saying there are lots of reasons to think this is not going to work out and this should be a disaster. Like if I were to tell you that Penn State and Iowa State were going to take their two football teams, mush them together, Rocco Becht was going to not be at 100% for most of camp, some of the most important players on offense and defense are not going to be available as they figure out what they are as a football team. If I told you that was what the outcome was going to be to firing James Franklin the day after the Northwestern game last year, your response would have probably been, oh God, we are screwed. And I'm almost concerned at how well it seems like things have gone, because for now, Matt, it seems like everybody has completely bought in on Matt Campbell's way of running Penn State football, from the coaches, poaching Danton Lynn. There have been some quotes from Danton Lynn where I don't exactly think he's been subtle about why he's coming to Penn State now as opposed to the last couple of times. I have a quote from ESPN right here. Let me see if I could pull it up. This is great podcasting.
You're shaking off the rust.
Yeah.
If I can chime in here real quick, but while you look at it, you have it.
Yeah. The more I talked to Coach Campbell, it reminded me of why I went to Penn State as a high school recruit. His vision for the program, I just felt like, man, this guy's a perfect fit for Penn State. The culture is going to be different. The atmosphere is going to be different. I just wanted to be a part of what he was doing here. That's a quote that really stuck out to me when I remembered that Penn State had pursued Danton Lynn in the past and weren't able to get him. And after last year especially, there is something really comforting about hearing all the reasons and just thinking all the reasons why this thing should not work, Matt. And through the spring, it seems like they have gone about as well. And of course, we're in the honeymoon period. They're not down by a touchdown to Northwestern at halftime yet, or they're not down, Wisconsin isn't up 10-0 on them, or just the stuff that happens during the football season, still in the honeymoon period. This honeymoon period seems like it's going about as well as it possibly could.
Well, that's kind of the appeal of a guy like Matt Campbell, no? He's coming in with he's not even 50 yet, and he already has well over a decade of head coaching experience. He's a guy who's taken over places that have been at rock bottom, and considering what expectations were for Penn State last season, I think the way things go, that was rock bottom relative to what that team could have been. And Matt Campbell comes in with a certain floor and a certain stability and a certain kind of coaching staff that has worked for him for a long time, who want to maintain working for him. So yes, I know it wasn't a full import of the Iowa State staff, but your OC, your offensive line coach, those guys that are going to read Penn State's offense specifically takes a solid step forward. Those guys have all come in, brought a lot of those key pieces with them, and kind of just moved a pretty decent Big 12 operation to the Big 10 with some better surrounding pieces specifically up front. So I think they're coming into this with a pretty solid floor. So yes, Bill, of course, it's the honeymoon phase. Matt Campbell does come off as what a old school Penn State fan would want a Penn State coach to be, is what Matt Campbell is. I truly do believe there is some validity to that statement from Danton Lynn. He does seem like the kind of Midwestern, oh shucks, everybody come on, we're all cleaning up after each other together. Come on, if you don't go to class on time, we have to go run the bleachers, blah, blah, blah. There is some, legitimacy to feeling like that's probably what it felt like under the Paterno regime for a long time. And it is nice to see that gap kind of get bridged. I think it's kind of a little bit overblown. I think Franklin did do his best to extend that olive branch, and that's the last time I'll mention him on this podcast. But Bill, I do really believe that things feel so stable because I think Matt Campbell is a very stabilizing force in any college program, because he's had to build Toledo, he's had to build Iowa State, and he's done such a good job doing it at multiple levels. I think it's pretty easy then to move that process over here to Penn State, which has a very solid infrastructure laid already.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I'm glad you touched on the fact that I'm now going to say some things that make it seem like I'm knocking James Franklin. I promise you I am not trying to do that. But Franklin came into Penn State at a time when it was very, very hard to kind of like boost up the ideal of Penn State in the eyes of a lot of Penn State fans for reasons I don't have to go into. Could he have done more of that? Absolutely. Like, sure. Campbell seems like he has come in and just like hit on every single note that everyone who is annoyed with James Franklin for one reason or another has been crying out for. Like, everything with Penn State's Letterman has just been completely nuts to me. It partially nuts in a like, what the hell was simmering under the surface for a decade that we didn't know about? Partially nuts to me in like, it's really wild that, or it's really convenient that you can say things like this now. And I guarantee when Penn State was, beating the brakes off of SMU in a playoff game, you had anything that you felt about James Franklin was absolutely not something that was bubbling to the surface for you. And wild in like, boy, there's something going on here. And it's pretty evident that Campbell noticed it right away and immediately made it a point to address that. I said it. I've said
Here's
it.
Real quick, Bill. Wait,
yeah,
can I chime in on that specific comment that Campbell noticed it right away?
Mhm.
Maybe he didn't notice it right away because I think it's hard to know, but you know who's still in that room? Who is that gap to that Letterman for a long time?
Cooper Cousins.
Yep, Cooper Cousins, exactly. And I mean, no, I'm sure Terry noticed a lot of things that maybe once Terry got the reins, Letterman started reaching back out and maybe sharing some things that, hey, I didn't like this about the old guy. Hey, can we talk about this? And retaining Terry, I think, was, kind of opened up the ability to rebuild those bridges. Sorry, I just wanted to chime in with that because maybe it wasn't something Campbell himself clocked, but having, that bridge and Terry, I think, kind of helped Campbell realize, hey, maybe we need to start repairing some relationships here. Yeah,
for sure. And like, it's a thing that I know you and I and our friends have talked about, Matt, but like, is James Franklin still Penn State's coach, or would he have left Penn State by his own volition if after the Northwestern game, Kerry Collins and Kijana Carter and Kyle Brady come out and say something along the lines of, listen, we understand that things are going poorly right now. We understand this is not up to standard. James is the guy to do that. I think he probably is, or he probably leaves by his own volition. And Pat Kraft, even with how knee-jerk and reactionary he could be, that's not something he could push back against. It's very clear that the people who were in James' corner were the guys who played for James. And he really lacked that level of like long-term institutional backing that you need to be able to lean on when times get tough. And there's a lot of stuff to unpack in that we don't need to unpack right now. I think that is evident. And I think Matt Campbell has gotten right in, immediately started to address that, whether that's for the current players, whether that's for past players, whether that is for fans, I don't know. The way he preaches toughness, integrity, just all those things that there was another quote in that ESPN piece from Cooper Cousins where let me find it. Like he basically said like toughness and togetherness and all these sorts of things. It almost like there was a lack of that, and that has been a thing that has hurt them in big games. All the leaders are now checking in with every single person on their team. We're learning that it's on us to execute. I feel like that's where we've been losing big games. Yes, the coaches have to coach us, but this is our team. We have to hold each other accountable. If I don't do my job, I'm screwing over the team. Players have to execute their job. General stuff like that. It seems like from the moment that Matt Campbell got in, his number one thing was to address whatever like pain points and bits of friction and whatever might exist from last year's team in the last however many years of Penn State football, which worth mentioning, pretty successful last couple of years of Penn State football up until last year existed. And that has fed into, I think this whole honeymoon period has like worked out really well and gone really well, even in spite of injuries and the fact that we still don't really know anything about what happens with this team when they get onto the football field. But like, if you were to ask a Penn State fan, just a general Penn State fan, what do you want after James Franklin's tenure comes to an end? I think they would have basically list a bunch of boxes that need to be checked. And it seems like Matt Campbell has gone through I want guys to be more in touch with the history of this program. I want guys, when the going gets tough, I want them to be able to lean on each other and believe that they have the ability to do this. I want Penn State to be like packaged as this ideal for a football program and a university, and not just like, uh, you know, something that exists in the world of modern college football and is constantly trying to increase its standing in it. There's a lot of there's a lot that I think is correct in that last thing, but I think a lot of Penn State fans would want the ideal of Penn State to be kind of like celebrated. And again, this sounds like it's a knock on James. I promise I'm not trying to knock him.
It's such a hard line to walk here.
James is a very future-facing coach. He was always viewing what's next. I think Campbell is a little bit more willing to like celebrate the past in a way that is really appealing to a lot of Penn State fans. And it seems like that has gone a long way with the current version of the team. Like, whenever like my guess is that 90% plus of this roster doesn't know who Kyle Brady is. Not a knock on Kyle Brady or anything. It's just like, there are young basketball players who think Paul George is the best player of all time. Like there's just like a disconnect between what 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-olds know and what other people know. And that's fine. But you can, like, when they put out like videos of players talking about like Kyle Brady addressed the team, Keyjana Carter addressed the team, and it seems like that has a real impact on the guys and they really enjoy stuff like that. Like, I think you can't help but feel good. And I think that's something that a lot of Penn State fans have probably wanted to see for a while. And they're really happy to see that like popping back up now. So like,
wait real quick to Campbell's credit. He's also had guys like Jair Brown and Pat Freiermuth there. So like, it's not just like the old school guys, it's the Franklin era guys from as recently as this decade who are coming back and, being a part of this thing. And that's impressive in and of itself that Matt Campbell understands that the past 12 years of Penn State football was a really phenomenal, maybe one of the best eras, top 3 best eras ever, in terms of like the heights that they took, that staff took this place to. So I think it's really important that it's not just like, oh my God, the 90s guys, the 2000s guys. It's like, no, Jair Brown, come talk. You have a pick in the Super Bowl. Come talk to the team. Like, I think that stuff is also very important because that's an era of Penn State football that is making a lot of money in the NFL and maybe can give to NIL one day. So we'll leave it at that.
Oh, please, God, just like, let's take advantage of the fact that our program, the alums, and also people around the university have a lot of money. I will admit this, Matt. One thing that I have found really fascinating about this entire offseason is how many quotes there have been from guys like Cooper Cousins and Anthony Donko in particular, just because they're the two that get thrown out there to give interviews because they're like really personable guys.
They're good ambassadors for the program.
Yeah.
Like likely captains.
Yeah. I've been really interested in some of the quotes that they've given that have like reframed how I view the last year or two of Penn State football. I don't know about you, but here are a couple of quotes that I'm going to try and find. One is from Anthony Donko that he gave around Thon. There's no pressure from the coaches, no pressure from the strength staff. You're not having to worry about somebody breathing down your neck, whether you make a mistake or stress about a small thing like being afraid. We're just able to be free, and that's like how it is in the team right now. Cooper Cousins had a quote in that aforementioned ESPN piece. Coach Campbell and his staff have done a phenomenal job of getting all us to gel together. We've had tight groups here, but this is the closest one I've seen. And these quotes have been really interesting to me because, like, you start hearing stuff like this and you start thinking of the last couple of years, particularly last year. And all of a sudden, like, really, it's really reframing how I think about the last few years and making me really optimistic about this year because, like, one thing that James always did, to his credit, because it worked out in a lot of ways, was he seemed like a coach who always tried to account for what could potentially go wrong and try to address it. And that inherently leads to some tightness in everybody about having to be perfect on every single play. Maybe that starts to manifest a bit more with Campbell once we actually get into the season, but I've been fascinated to hear the holdovers in particular talk about how things just seem different now. And how those things, and like, I don't think you can help but go like, if this team is going to start being a bit more loose and a bit more confident in what it can accomplish, yeah, okay, let's go.
Can I share like a specific anecdote that kind of touches on that? Because I think Franklin always had a reputation as a control freak, but there had been some reporting last fall that after the Oregon loss, because everything was building to the Oregon loss and they shit their pants in prime time. And I think there was an embarrassment there. And then after UCLA, then I think things got bad. And when you're already that paranoid, I think things can spiral. And there was a report, I don't think we touched on it last year, Bill. And this comes from Matt Fortuna from Inside Zone, the Substack. This is a very specific example of what I have to imagine the pressure cooker after that UCLA game, that program felt like. Quote, Northwestern had hired a freelance videographer for the game, AJ Poindexter, and this made Franklin uneasy. Poindexter is the son of Anthony Poindexter, Penn State's co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach. He had done work for NFL Films, the NCAA, and Penn State football, among others. To Franklin, the sight of the son of one of his trusted lieutenants working the visiting sidelines at Beaver Stadium would create a terrible look for him and his program. Never mind that few, if any, fans or media members would notice Poindexter or likely care that he was working for the opposition. By midweek, he had tried to talk the younger Poindexter out of doing the job. That guy's head is fucking spinning, a person with knowledge of the exchange told Inside the Zone of Franklin's attitude last week. If things had gotten so bad that he was starting to become such a control freak that he gave a shit where Anthony Poindexter's son was working, that's how you know it got really toxic in that locker room. So I think maybe we're hearing these quotes come out of it when it was at its worst, but still the fact that it was able to get that bad kind of says that you kind of had to blow this whole thing up and kind of go from there. Because that report, I remember reading it last fall. That's when I was like, man, it was time. Like it was time to move on from this. If he was starting to become such a control freak obsessive that he cared about something like that, that's when I knew things were going to be a problem and that this team really had no shot to right the ship if things were going to be that tense inside that building.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And I think hearing stuff like that, I mean, it was very, and James has like spoken a bit about how like he took risks and approached things differently last year, all that. And I you know, not to say that I think he's like lying or making excuses or anything. Like, I think there's definitely something to all of that. It's very obvious that last year's team had a like tightness and attention about, and we saw it on the field. Like we watched the Oregon game and how it just didn't work we saw it in the non-conference, how they couldn't throw the ball down the field. And we saw it in the Oregon game where they were just mortified the entire time. Like there was definitely a tension that existed around Penn State football that like was pretty bad. And coming out on the other side of it, and hearing from guys who are talking about how like excited they are and how that stuff doesn't matter anymore. And it's now about like, okay, we're going to get together as a football team. We are going to be a football team. You know, we have a quarterback in Rocco Becht, not to knock Drew Aller, but like we have a quarterback in Rocco Becht who was like put on earth to be a college football quarterback. Drew Aller I think was probably put on earth to be an NFL quarterback. Rocco Becht was put on earth to be a college football quarterback because he just seems like a Boy Scout. All of this stuff, I think when we talk about why this offseason has gone so well, it seems like it really is because Franklin, I think last year Franklin put a lot of trust in his players. I think he put the trust in his players to say, like, you guys got us to a semifinal last year and came back. I am going to trust in all of you to lead us through this offseason. And it just didn't work. Like, I think we can pretty safely say it didn't work. It seems like Campbell's taking a little bit more of a hands-on role in like cultivating that and empowering the guys instead of saying like, I believe in you because you have done this. not saying one approach is better or worse. One approach helped Penn State make it to a national championship semifinal. But it seems like there is an air of like positivity around the program and an air of like just a new set of eyes and a new approach to things that seems like it's going to go really, really well for the talented guys that Penn State kept. Seems like it's going to be very, very familiar for the talented guys that Penn State brought in from Iowa State, and seems like it's going to help cultivate a good environment for the guys coming from these other schools, coming from Ohio State, coming from, I'm just trying to go through the depth chart here and look at where some other guys are from, coming from UCLA or Utah or whatever else it might be, that is really empowering and really exciting. And it's all setting up now, Matt, where going into this season, they're kind of able to balance, like, their expectations are going to do well because it's Penn State, but also like there's something new and fresh about all of this that should put a pep in your step and make things a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Make things feel a lot different than it did last year.
And I think that's the benefit of a pretty trash non-conference too. Like, you can keep really good vibes going until you come to Northwestern, like, to open the.
May I push back against that?
Hit me. Oh, Temple.
Last year's non-conference.
No, fair, but Bill, but like at the same time, it's like how do I really want to word this so I don't sound like an asshole? Last year's non-conference was not supposed to be, hey, here's a building block. We're figuring out the kind of team we are, given what that team should have been right off the rip with everybody coming back. As opposed to this time out there where it's so many moving parts. I completely understand if things are going to be a little bit of a building block while they sort some things out. Like, Penn State's approach in the non-conference last year probably should have been, hey, we're going to go try to drop 80 on your head every single week. And like, just show, hey, we're going to get everybody's confidence up, as opposed to them looking like crap for 3 weeks. This time out there, if they look like crap for 3 weeks, maybe I'll understand it. I say that now, months before the season. Who knows what I'm going to say when they only score 28 against Temple or whatever. So I do think that, maybe you can draw a line here that's like, hey, they got better this week. Here's what they worked on. Here's what they grew on. Hey, the offensive line played together for the second time ever, and they only gave up 1 sack instead of 3. Like, I think we're going to be able to see, A leads to B, B leads to C, and take that as a positive step forward, as opposed to last year where it was like, what do you mean we're just at A gets to B? We should be at S gets to T at this point, given what this team should have been. So that's my only caveat with that comment. But overall, I think it should be. I think the good vibes should maintain for a while, and I hope they do. And I hope Northwestern vibes are bad, because it's looking like that ticket is going to be expensive for the opening of New Ryan Field. But we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Do you want to know another really good way to avoid looking like shit, Matt?
Is it going to be home field apparel, which I'm rocking right now?
It's purchasing things from Home Field Apparel, yes. And God, you kept talking, and I was like, "Oh, Matt, please do not say something else that would act as a good segue. I really, really have the segue down here, and you didn't. So thank you for that."
Mid-season form, baby.
That is correct. If there's one thing I could do, it's read an ad. Home Field Apparel. They've been with us since we decided to go podcast only a couple of years ago. What was it, 22, Matt? We went podcast only.
I think this is year 5 of just being the podcast.
21, 22, whatever. It all blends together. There have been multiple presidential elections since then. No, there's only been one presidential election. There have been multiple elections since then, and everything just kind of blends together when you view things through that lens. Home Field Apparel has been nothing but great to us and been nothing but great to Penn State fans. If you head over to their website, you can check out whatever you want. Like, there's a lot of stuff for Penn State. If you're an Iowa State fan trying to listen in, see how the Matt Campbell era is going, they got Iowa State stuff. If you're a Virginia Tech fan, because you want to be able to clip this and go, look, they're still mad about James Franklin, you can go and get some Virginia Tech stuff. Whatever, for not any college, but for a whole hell of a lot of colleges out there, Home Field Apparel has stuff for you or the college sports fan in your life. And they also have a couple of collections of things that are not collegiate apparel. Let me see if I could find it. Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the American Basketball Association. They got a lot of really good stuff over at Home Field Apparel. I know some of my favorite t-shirts, some of my favorite hoodies come from Home Field Apparel. They have jackets that are just absolutely dynamite. They have hats that I'm not rocking one right now, but I purchased multiple hats from Home Field Apparel. One of them is basically my go-to Penn State hat at this point. They got something for you, or they got something for the college sports fan in your life. If you want to check out what they have over at Home Field Apparel, go to homefieldapparel.com. Check out everything that they have in their collection. Again, go over to homefieldapparel.com and see what they have for you, or the college sports fan in your life. Thank you, as always, to Home Field Apparel for sponsoring this podcast. And Matt, let's do a good and a bad thing about this offseason. Let's start with the thing that you are the most excited about at this point. Let's see, May, June, July, about 3.5 months out from the start of the regular season.
Can I do not most excited, but can I do most intrigued?
Sure. Yeah, I don't care.
So if you remember, Bill, we did a draft a while back on the top players that we think Matt Campbell should retain. I had either the first or second pick. It's only two of us, so it was one of the two. But with my first round pick, I took Xavier Gilliam, the defensive tackle who ended up at the University of Tennessee on Rocky Top alongside Jim Knowles. And a big reason I picked Xavier Gilliam was because we had spent the last couple of years really understanding and really hearing a lot of the time that it is incredibly difficult to get beefy defensive tackles into your program in the transfer portal because they cost a lot of money and they're few and far between. Like, who was the guy? Was it, oh my God, what was it? Is it Blay or Bray from Louisiana Tech a couple years back who there was a
David Blay.
Yes, Penn State couldn't win a bidding war for a Louisiana Tech defensive tackle. Like, there are some things that just, as I understood it at the time, defensive tackles were really hard to get. And then all of a sudden, you see the defensive tackle haul Penn State had this year. And I'm going to butcher some names here. And I am so sorry. I promise I will get these down. But you look at the guys they were able to bring in. Elijah Carnell from Iowa State, 6'5", 296. That's a big guy. Armstrong Nwodum from Oklahoma State, 6'2", 319. Siale Tuapaki from UCLA. I believe it's going to be his 6th season of college football, a grown man, 6'2", 337. Dallas Vakahali, I believe is how you pronounce it. I apologize in advance. 6'2", 337. Keanu Williams from UCLA, 6'5", 329. Bill, that is beef brought in mass, which I did not think was a thing. Penn State could land one or two of those guys. For them to land 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys like that, as well as maintain guys like DeAndre Cook, who's 300 pounds. They move Caleb Brewer over to that side of the ball. He's pushing 300 pounds. For them to go out there and bring in this kind of beef along the defensive line was a very pleasant surprise that I truly did not think was possible for Penn State football to do. So that is maybe not the thing I'm most, excited about or most intrigued by, but I think it might have been the thing, one of the most underrated stories from this offseason that I don't think enough people are talking about, just considering what we've always known defensive tackle portal recruiting to be. So very, very intrigued by that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm very interested in kind of the general shift that it seems like Penn State has done on defense, where I think for a very long time, what James Franklin wanted his defense to be was fast and athletic and basically able to run with Ohio State. And at a certain point, they then as they built a team to try and do that, and, they didn't beat Ohio State, but they did a pretty good job, all things considered, putting together a defense that could run with Ohio State. That's when Michigan starts ascending, and all of a sudden Michigan has these 340-pound offensive linemen who are just pushing them backwards. And it's very interesting to me that as Campbell comes in, as Danton Wynn come in, and they start things off at Penn State. Worth mentioning, they really only have one team who I think is going to try to throw the ball 50 times on them in USC. We're going to get big. We're going to get beefy. We're going to get physical up front, and we're going to try and take it to you in the trenches with a bunch of, you mentioned how big they are, Matt. Taupaki, redshirt senior. Williams, redshirt senior. Dallas Vakahali, he is a junior. Elijah Carnell, redshirt sophomore. They got some adults in the trenches. And I think it's very interesting how they've tried to make the transition to being a team that is going to be able to win in the trenches, as opposed to a team that was more built on speed and athleticism in a way that worked really, really well for them. Whether that was in the trenches, whether that was at linebacker, whether that was the secondary. Not to say that they have like a bunch of stiffs in the back seven, or anything like that. I for one am just like the thought of watching Darius Dixon play football gets me through like long days at work. So there's a lot of really good in the back end of the defense, but I'm glad you mentioned.
Can I say something real quick on that point, Bill? Just because you called it out. You talked about Siale Tauapaki and how he's a senior. Bill, he was a recruit in the 2019 class. That was Brandon Smith's class. That was Adisa Isaac's class. That was, who else is a good name I can drop from Joey Porter Jr.'s class. Like, this is a grown adult. And I know he's had injuries, and, it always sucks. No one's ever on purpose in college football for 7 or 8 years. But as a benefit Penn State's to reap that they have like a 25-year-old who's going to be playing a lot of snaps for them along the interior against, maybe some interior offensive lineman who can't even drink yet. So just a little thing I want to call out.
No, for sure. I think it's a very good thing to call out. I touched on a lot of what I'm most excited about, which is how like I think the mentality of like being driven by fear, or like being not necessarily by fear, but like what's going to go wrong over and over again, and trying to like hyper compensate for that. And like there's a new set of eyes. Like all of that stuff I already touched on it, and I'm still very excited about that. I also want to just because we haven't really talked about it a lot yet, or we haven't really talked about him a lot yet, and we're going to talk about him a lot, and so much of this entire thing revolves around this guy, Rocco Becht, who has been a really good and really productive college quarterback. Dealt with some injuries last year, and if you like look at his game log from last year, you can see the point. I think it was against either Cincinnati or Colorado, where he suffered like a concussion or hurt his shoulder, whatever it was, and all of a sudden, like his play just falls off. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was against Cincinnati. Cincinnati, Rocco Becht. Yeah, it was it was that game. He took a big hit to the head. I'm going to read his QBRs before and after. He ends up getting before and after the Cincinnati game, against Kansas State, 75.2, against South Dakota, 94.5, against Iowa, 69.4, Arkansas State, 75.9, Arizona, 95.2. Cincinnati game, QBR, 47.9. He ends up getting hurt. Against Colorado, 36.7, BYU, 33.2, Arizona State, 38.9. And then he plays a little bit better to end the season. TCU 59.7, Kansas 98, Oklahoma State 38. His year is basically broken down to pre-concussion and post-concussion. And he is a really talented, really good quarterback. It's going to be very easy to make a lot of Trace McSorley comparisons with him for very obvious reasons. But I also think with how much stress Matt Campbell placed on you have to have alignment between your head coach and your quarterback, and bringing in a quarterback who like knows what the head coach wants and is able to be a reflection of him in the locker room, knows exactly what the offense coordinator wants and is able to be a reflection of him with the offense around you, knows exactly what the quarterback's coach wants and can be that bridge to him, between him and the rest of the room, a very young, very inexperienced room. All of that is incredibly important. Having a quarterback to kind of jumpstart this thing who has that, I think is really, really important. I'm really excited for Rocco Becht, man. What I want every Penn State fan to do, once you are done listening to this, I want you to go over to YouTube. I want you to pull up the highlights of, let me look at what game it was. It was,
and then while you're there, subscribe to Roar Lions Roar on YouTube.
Yes, obviously you should do that. I'm trying to remember what game it was, but it was the first game where he ever stepped. Oh wait, not him. It was Brock Purdy. It was Brock Purdy's first ever game in 2018 against Oklahoma State. And I want you to just watch how loosely a first-time quarterback played in like Matt Campbell's entire system. Or Matt Campbell's general approach to empowering his quarterback and letting his quarterback play. And then I want you to go back and watch some of Rocco Beck's games from his first year as the starting quarterback at Iowa State. He played all right in that first game against Iowa, against Oklahoma State, which is kind of his really big breakout game. When they played BYU in his first year as the starter, his performance against Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl a couple of years ago against Arizona State in the Big 12 championship game, he had a pretty good game. There is just like a looseness and a confidence that he plays with that for all that Drew Aller was really good at, that was never really a thing that he played with except for stretches in the 2024 season. So I am like over the moon about the fact that Rocco Becht is here, Matt. And I think that if Penn State has a big year, it is going to be, it's going to be about the whole team. It's going to be about what Matt Campbell does, what Dan Lynn does, Taylor Mauser does, all these guys. If there's one singular player who I think is going to help drive them to a good season, it is Rocco Becht, because like he just knows what he needs to do in this offense and is good enough to do it.
And I think that's the big benefit of having him around all spring, where he's able to take a step back. Like for him to go through essentially installing the offense, because you can't just hit the ground running when you have all of these new pieces. Rocco Becht got to take a ton of mental reps and figure out, hey, how can I best set this offense up for success? Because I already know it. So let's make sure I can control every aspect of the other 10 guys at the field as essentially a coach throughout spring ball. And that way, when I step in, I know everybody around me is up to speed. I think that might be I remember John Reed told me years ago at a media day how quickly the game slowed down for him when he had to miss that one season with a knee injury. And then he came back and he was even better coming out of it. I do wonder if we could have a very similar thing for Rocco Becht here, where he got to be a coach for install. And now he's just a plug and play piece in every sense of the word. So I'm very intrigued to see what that looks like.
Agreed. Let's go to the thing we're most concerned about, Matt. I will let you start here because my guess is yours is going to be a lot more specific than mine. So go ahead and please tell me what your big concern is.
Man, this is going to be a hard one for me to articulate, because I think Taylor Mauser is very much the kind of guy who is like, I don't give a shit if we have to, I don't give a shit how long it takes to figure out what we're good at. Once we figure it out, we are going to run it down your throat. And I think Penn State might take a little bit of time figuring out what its identity is. Like, listen, dude, they imported a lot of talented receivers from that Iowa State roster. They didn't come here to run block. They imported a lot of talented tight ends from Iowa State. They didn't come here not to get their touches and them just to spread it out to the wide receivers who have pretty good talent. What's another good one? They have these running backs they brought in, and Carson Hansen and James Peoples. They didn't come here, and Quentin Martin didn't stick around not to get touches. Like, there's a lot of pieces here, Bill, and a very talented offense and a very balanced offense, I think, for the first time in a long time. So I guess my biggest concern is how quickly can Penn State figure out what is their best course of action, and how quickly can they then rep the shit out of that in game action so they can be ready to rock when they have to go on the road on a short week to a Northwestern team that has a new oh my God, is it Neuheisel? Is that the OC now for them? I'm still scared of that guy.
Yes.
So I think that's my biggest concern, Bill. It's a pretty macro thing, and it's a good problem to have. But I feel like Penn State has known its identity as a team that wants to run the football and throw it to the tight end for years and years and years. And now I think maybe, not that that's not going to be a massive part of this offense, but again, Chase Sowell and Brett Eskelson and Kobe Howard and, Zay Robinson, there's guys on this roster out wide who deserve touches too. And we kind of saw the last couple of years, if you don't have the threat of your guys out wide, you're going to not be very good offensively for long stretches of the season. So I'm very interested to see what that looks like going from there.
Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. Mine's way broader than that, which is we still have no idea how any of this is going to work. I am going to go through the list of people who I think we could say with 100% confidence that we have seen them perform at like a a Big Ten level. It is James Peoples, who we know for a fact, who we know is like a nice Big Ten running back.
Mhm.
It is Andrew Rapplier, who we saw him have a good end of year last year. We're, going to see him hopefully scale up and have a
Mhm.
bigger year this year. But, we'll see what ends up happening there, especially as he's like with other good tight ends
Mhm.
in Penn State's tight end room. Anthony Donko, we just know he's a good Big Ten offensive lineman. And we're especially excited because he is going to be playing right tackle this year, which is a more natural position. Cooper Cousins, I mean,
We don't know. We really don't know that much about Cooper.
Yeah. There are the two UCLA transfers along the defensive line who we have seen them play at a Big Ten level. It was for UCLA, not exactly the 86 Bears on defense, but like we know that they could be decent Big Ten football players. And then it's like Zion Tracy and Ryan Barker. Like a lot of this team is about scaling up from the Big 12 to the Big 10 or scaling up in roles for Quentin Martin, for Kobe Howard, for Malachi Goodman, for, insert name of guy here, Yvonne Kamoju or Max Granville or Darius Dixon or Davian Collins. Just like it's a lot of guys who are trying to say, we think they can go from this to this. And don't get me wrong, I'm confident in a lot of that.
Yeah.
But it's still a thing we don't know. And with Matt Campbell, the big overarching question going back to when Penn State first hired him was how much of the way that Matt Campbell goes about his business is because he truly believes this is the best way to win football games, and how much of, looking through their schedule from last year, how much of them losing 24-17 to Colorado, partially, it has notes of Penn State losing to overtime in 9 overtimes to Illinois because the quarterback was hurt, but how much of like the losses that they've experienced at Iowa State, or like the gross games they played at Iowa State, like the 24-16 win over Arkansas State in Jonesboro last year, which is a weird sentence, was because Matt Campbell believes in playing a tighter game. I don't have the big talent advantage, so I'm going to try to reduce variance in football games. How much of just this entire thing is because Matt Campbell believes in this, and how much of this is, okay, I got guys now, I'm going to be able to do things a little bit different. Like it's interesting. Like it is very interesting to me how much of this entire project is dependent on going from Iowa State to Penn State. No disrespect to Iowa State, no disrespect to the Big 12, good football program under Matt Campbell, good conference in recent years. But how much of this entire thing, all of these unknowns that we have, are going to be good or going to get better solely because Matt Campbell is now at Penn State and now has Big Ten caliber athletes? Like, for all the optimism that we shared earlier in this, Matt, like, it's a real question. And it's something that I don't know if we're going to be able to get a good answer to until, halftime in Evanston in the first game in that beautiful new stadium, and the new stadium is on fire because Northwestern is up 17-7.
That's where I do think, Bill, like you called out those specific examples of the struggles that this Iowa State team that came over had to endure last year. That's where you find your growth. Like that's where you figure out the guts of your team. So to kind of combined I think the Penn State part of this roster that is pissed about a 7-6 season and is excited for a breath of fresh air, and then to come in with an Iowa State portion of the roster that wants to prove, hey, we can play in the Big Ten. Hey, we've been down before. Hey, we've been through hell and we know how to get out of it. I think could prove to be a very fruitful marriage of those two rosters. And I'm very intrigued to see how that whole thing plays out, because if you have two portions of the roster coming together to collectively kind of exercise some demons and prove some people wrong, I think they could go into some environments where a James Franklin coach roster would have been terrified to make a mistake, looking at a trip to Ann Arbor and a trip out to Seattle. And for this type of roster to say, I mean, what are you going to do? Shoot me? And then go for it and just go off the rip and try to, light up the scoreboard a little bit and shock some people. So I think that change is going to be really interesting to watch. And I'm glad that you called out, hey, here's all the shit that went wrong. Let's see how they use that to come out of this and play in a Big Ten environment week in and week out.
I'm sorry. I was trying to look something up.
Sorry.
Let's see. It was the quote that our guy Johnny McGonigal at Penn Live got, where he spoke to Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel of the Houston Texans, who were at Iowa State, and it was it was about Taylor Mauser and his offense. Coach uses the expression that it's a let your nuts hang offense. He's going to take shots. He's fearless, which is just a great quote.
Yep.
And Penn State needs a lot of that. Especially on the heels of last year, and they need an offense that is going to just be like, okay, we're going to do what we can to take it to you. I am also very interested in what happens when they try to let their nuts hang in Ann Arbor, and the stadium pulse is going crazy, and Michigan's defense is just really, really nasty and really, really physical, and it's a lot harder, or it's really, really, really hard to let your nuts hang. I do think, to everything that you just said, the fact that it is a team, or a lot of the Iowa State guys really are battle tested and know how to navigate this stuff. And it seems like Campbell really does believe that, like, in moments where it gets tough, what's the saying that I think it was Marv Levy who used to say, like, too tough for them, just right for us, or whatever. Like, it seems like that's the thing that Matt Campbell really believes in. I don't know what practically that ends up looking like when you are actually in those situations at Penn State, and it's not just a hypothetical, or it's not just like, hey, we've played tough games against TCU and Oklahoma State in the past. But who knows? Like, I am generally, and this is a thing that I think will come through over the course of the offseason, I'm generally really optimistic and really excited about where Penn State is and where Penn State is going. It's just one of those things that's going to be stuck into the back of my mind until we actually see it. Because I don't know if you remember last year, Matt. We made a lot of assumptions about what we thought was going to happen, and then none of them happened. So cautious optimism, as opposed to where I was last year, which was, bring on all comers. We're Penn State. We're going to be able to take care of this. Oh God, everything's on fire against Oregon. This is bad.
Yeah. Yikes. What a mess that was. Glad it's over.
Boy. Yeah. I have you been able to, like, go back and watch highlights from any of the games during that losing streak last year? Because I still haven't been able to.
I rewatched Oregon. Just because the defense really, I think, deserved its flowers for what they did in that game. Also, man, dude, in overtime, that Dante Moore fumble on the RPO handoff that just it bounces the other way. Zane Durant, whatever. Not doing it. Moving on. Not doing that again. I'm excited for Matt Campbell. And I'm excited to be previewing position by position. I'm excited, Bill, to do who he play for each and every week, because there's a lot of guys. And I guarantee you do not know where Ken Talley's playing football this fall, Bill.
Mississippi State.
Not even close. We'll get there when we get there. We'll get there in, like, July. Don't you dare look it up. Don't you dare.
I know he was at Michigan State, and then
he's been at like 5 schools since then. Yes.
Yeah. Was Mississippi State one of them?
It was not.
Okay. Well, screw me then. Any final things you want to talk about, Matt, before we send the people off to their week?
Memorial Day. Travel safe, enjoy, start of summer, have a great time. It's warm here in Chicago for the first time in a while. I have the AC going, which is a great feeling that I have AC this year, because I'm not going to be sweating. Back on YouTube, I went to the draft. That was fun. Pittsburgh, great city, had a great time. Steelers fans, I wouldn't have booed Drew Aller personally. Like, if you have a quarterback who can maybe help you end the longest playoff losing streak in the division, and help you as a city end your 3,000 plus day playoff advance streak, I probably wouldn't have booed that guy when you're paying Aaron Rodgers $25 million, but that's just me. Renegade rocks. Renegade was so cool. Penn State. I told you this, Bill. I despise, and you know what? We're about an hour in. I know people in the athletic department listen to this podcast from time to time. If you're in the athletic department, it's a new era now. We don't have to pretend like Sweet Caroline is a thing people care about for Penn State. We don't have to do it anymore. Sweet Caroline sucks. It's not good. Renegade rocks. It's cool. Find something different and new that's actually fun. The OC likes Steely Dan. Do something with Steely Dan. Figure something out. I hate Sweet Caroline. After watching how cool
It's a bad
Renegade
song.
was, it's a bad song. Stop doing it. I'm begging you. You already got rid of the number 0 tradition, which was made up anyway. The Sweet Caroline tradition just came back 5 years ago, and no one cares about it. Stop.
Longer than that.
Maybe 10 years ago. It was. I don't think it was a thing when I was in college.
It was.
Was it? I don't remember it. I remember.
I only remember this because when I was with Onward State for April Fool's Day one year, we did a story. There was it was Penn State for responsible stewardship, and one of the causes they championed was having Sweet Caroline be a thing again. Having Sweet Caroline be a thing. It was a thing we want to play in the stadium. It was one of the things they got rid of after the scandal. Whatever, a very silly thing looking back on it. And I remember doing the story for April Fool's Day. PS4RS changes tune on Sweet Caroline after realizing it's a bad song. And I have been on this train for a while. I would love it if we got rid of Sweet Caroline and we did a song that wasn't bad instead as our big sing-along song.
No.
Yeah, Michigan has Mr. Brightside, which is a kind of a weird song. To have a bunch of football fans sing when you listen to Sweet Caroline, not Sweet Caroline, Mr. Brightside, and what it's about.
It's a banger, Bill. But it's a
but
banger.
It is. Don't get me wrong. I love me some Mr. Brightside. Yeah, maybe next week we will be doing our quarterback preview, but we will also be making a list of songs that we want them to start playing at Beaver Stadium instead.
Sabrina Carpenter's album hits. She's from Pennsylvania. I don't care. She
is a Pennsylvanian. That is correct. We'll add that to the to-do list. Yeah, Drew Aller in Pittsburgh, and yesterday they announced Aaron Rodgers is going to be coming back. So I'm very curious in how that goes because I can see it working out. I can also see Drew playing for my local team, the Columbus Aviators of the UFL. So
get out of here. Get out of here. Isn't that where KJ Hamler plays right now?
KJ plays in the UFL. KJ plays in the UFL for Rocco Beck's dad.
What team?
I found
the Florida team?
Orlando.
The Columbus team. Orlando.
Don't ask me what their nickname is. Orlando, UFL, the Orlando Storm.
That feels made up. That feels AI generated.
It's a team that has KJ and former future fan of Penn State football Hank Bachmeier on the roster.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a good bit.
I actually did go to a Columbus Aviators game where the game's MVP was John Lovett because Penn State, offense coordinator Todd Haley decided to run the football 50 times, and John Lovett toted that thing for about 4.3 yards per carry. It was a slog.
Keep cashing those checks, baby. Play as long as you can.
Play on the soccer field. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. We hope it wasn't too arduous getting through this, but we will be better the next time. I am slightly
sorry I stopped looking at the camera at the end there. I'm looking at famous musical artists from Pennsylvania. Half these people I've never heard of before. Daryl Hall and Oates. Sorry, go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
Breaking Benjamin, yeah. Yes. Make sure you subscribe wherever you go and get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, whether that is Apple Podcasts, whether that is Spotify, whatever it might be. And please leave us a 5-star review if your podcasting platform allows for it. Make sure you follow us on social media, Twitter and Blue Sky. And of course, as always, shout out to our friends at Home Field Apparel. One last time, thank you everyone for listening to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. From Matt Filipovitz, I'm Bill DeFilippo. Take care, everyone.
Penn State basketball, my little bit of update here. Exactly.